So we have a case study that asks us to build an Instagram ad post layout using auto layout and constraints. So at first glance, it seems pretty straightforward. But I feel like if someone asks you this question, it's kind of nice to like dive deep into, like the constraints and edge cases, because sometimes like you're like working at a company and like a PM like provides you, like I want to get this built. But one of the things about like these general like questions is that if you don't to try to like set your constraints and like look into the edge cases, you can have like scope like feature creep, where like everything's not defined, and like you might like accidentally extend the layout and like the due date of a project. So it's always nice to like go through like just this question, like, and ask like more questions from like this question, the given question. It shows that you care a lot about like trying to get things done, and like thinking a lot about just like the project at hand. So one of the principles that I think we want to keep in mind of when like coding this is reusability. Like, do you have like a system design in mind? Like, are you working with designers to keep the app very consistent, and are these like components reusable throughout the app, so that you don't have to like duplicate code everywhere? We can try and keep like business logic outside of the views, and then make it consumer friendly. And by consumer friendly, like I'm not talking about like the people using the app. I'm talking about like your teammates who will be using your code. So like maybe you created like a custom view. It should be easy for them to just instantiate the view. Like maybe like there's not too much parameters that they have to worry about. Just like it's something like that. So like they can pass in like a enum instead of like passing in like 25 parameters. And then like when there's like regressions, it's easy to like debug and like step through. And there's like isn't like a lot of like functions where like it's hard to like debug and find the root cause. So like that kind of adds up with the clean and organized as well. So yeah, so this is what an Instagram ad layout looks like. So it looks like pretty much like a post layout. You have the profile of the Instagram person who puts out the ad. You have one more CTA, like call to action. You have those buttons below it as well, and the description. And when you click on more, it expands the label. So there's a lot of things going on. Like as a user, like everyone thinks like looks pretty simple, but like there's a lot of UI components going on here. So we wanna like split this out and see like how we can make this easier for us. So in terms of scoping, let's talk about the scoping so that we're only like responsible for what we need to work on, and anything else would probably be a follow-up. So for device supporting, we're probably going to be focused on iPhone. We can try to make it like dynamic from a constraint perspective, so that it doesn't like bleed out for like iPad or like Mac, or like even like the iPhone SE second generation, like smaller iPhone sizes. So in terms of like different like layout, it will always look like this. So we don't have to worry about, like different layouts for like different devices for now. But we'll definitely keep on trying to make it like dynamic from a constraint perspective. Are there like plans to reuse this component elsewhere? Like, we'll keep that in mind as well. I did explain that, it's possible this looks like a post layout as well. So like we can have like a enum that supports both post and add. And that enum can decide like what type of content we show and whatnot. Yeah, and we can talk about which views are dynamic. I think this is referring to dynamic as in like server side dynamic. So like, is the server going to provide us the buttons, the icons, or is that like a local thing where you need static images? We definitely can all agree that like the description and the interview, like kickstart, like all of the text copies is probably going to come from server, but for buttons, is that like an n amount of buttons, or like are we limited to always 3 buttons? For now, yeah, if you ask this question, I feel like we can make the assumption that it will always be those 3 buttons, like the hearts, comment, and the send message button. So we can make that assumption. Okay, check if there's any questions. Sorry. Okay. So, and then after like we define the scope, we can jump into like tool assessment. So this is where you explain like what tools you're going to use for building up this layout. So I'm thinking of like leading, those constraints. This right now, like we're just focusing on like one view. So like no worries and no need to worry about like something. So it's like you don't have to worry about table views or like collection views at the moment. We're going to talk about that in the next case study. But for now, we can just focus on constraints, and probably we can make use of lazy initialization, where like the view is used only when it's used. So let's take a look at this case study and work on it together. Let me go back to this. I'm going to take a screenshot of this as well. And I'm going to switch my screen too. So let me switch my screen to desktop 1. So the first thing, before coding, I usually like to just like divide things up into like smaller pieces, so that if we want to reuse like the, like I noticed like a footer view, potentially a header view, we can do so, and we can reuse this components as well. But it doesn't have to be reusable, but like the more like you like make this into like smaller components, I think it's easier to work with, because like let's say that you finish just like this header view, right? And somehow like you finish this section as well, and you're not able to finish the footer view, you can delegate that task to like another team member. So depending on like the way you work on things, it might make it easier for you to like delegate some tasks when you need to. If you work on like like the label, and then you jump into like the content, and then like you jump into like maybe like part of this footer view, and you work on the heart, what's going to happen is like there might be potential for like merge conflicts, where like your team member, like by the time you need to delegate the task, the team member probably has to work on like any of these components, and then you guys are working on like files that you have already worked on, or like you haven't like committed to the PR yet. So like there might be merge conflicts on that. Well, Pranav, you raised your hand. You can you can talk, sorry.
So is this, will we be writing to a repo during the interview, or is it, are you talking about in general?
In general.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I'm just sorry. I'm just talking about like the benefits of just like making things into small components.
Okay, got it. Got it.
Thank
you.
Yeah, no problem. So let's annotate this and highlight our game plan. So what I'm thinking is, yeah. Okay, so we have this. So what I'm thinking is we can create 3 sections. One is this section, and then we can work on this section. And then we can expand into like the bottom section. So that, I think that sounds like a good plan for now. If we need to break it into like smaller sections, we can do so. So like, let's start from a clean slate. So I'm gonna start like a new project. Sorry, this is a try-catch example for like something that I've been like prototyping and trying out. So let's start like a new project. We'll call this post add, or we'll call it post. This should be fine. Oops. Sorry, give me 1 second. All right, so we're starting from a clean slate, and let's create a folder so that we can make sure that we organize our things. We'll call this a view. So I think this is where like when you ask this type of question, I feel like the common question that usually comes up is, you know, like, are you going to build this? Are you going to use like a SID to build this, or are you going to build this programmatically? And this usually, like, you can answer both ways. But I feel like the programmatic approach has, like, you have the ability to list more pros than cons. And I'll explain why as well. So from like, let's say you use like a SID. I think what's going to happen is you're going to set your constraints on the SID file, and then you know, like set all of those items and like connect it via like IB outlets. What usually happens is SID files are great when like you're creating things like very fast, but in terms of, from a perspective of like consistency and like communication with your team, I think it's very hard to understand like what's going on, because I know that some people, they can have like shortcuts, like I'm gonna just go to like the main right here. Like you can set like different like keypads for like different attributes, and that's very hard to like know what's going on off the top of your head, unless you're looking into like the XML file and you're trying to see what's going on. So like from a debugging standpoint, like it takes time to understand like what your teammate has been working on compared to like just like working off of like just one script file. So from my perspective, like I think working on your views programmatically is probably easier for the team to understand like what's going on. The only con for this style is that there's probably going to be more lines of code. You probably have to instantiate items, do all of your configurations on the file. It's easier, and like you probably have less chances of merge conflicts compared to like working on like a zip file that will potentially modify the project file as well. So if you add this and it modifies the project file once and you commit, and then you work on your code, then it becomes like easier to like deal with. So that's one way like why like doing a programmatic approach might make more sense. And it provides like ways of, if you want to copy and paste those like 3 sections that we talked about, it's easier to do so. You just like literally like copy and paste. If you build it from the zip, you might have to create like a new zip files for the header, and it just more zip files, like the more like complex it is.
Want to become a software engineer at Google? You can, like thousands of our students. You just need to learn from those who've already cleared FANG interviews. At Interview Kickstart, our interview prep courses are developed and taught live by 150 plus instructors from Tier 1 companies like Google and Facebook. Our courses are tailored to help you crack software engineering domain interviews, including back-end, full stack, machine learning, embedded systems, data science, and more. To learn more, book your 3 webinar slot today